I want a Porygon Z, but trading is just so annoying. Where's my other DS? I haven't seen that thing in a while. Maybe it's over here. Let's see. Nope. Nope. Hey. See my DS? Some help. What the hell? Okay. Maybe it's in here. Nope. No. God, where is this stupid... Huh? Hey, look at that. Alright. Now, let's go and... The battery's dead. Fuck! You guessed it, today's video is about trade evolutions and why I feel they gots to go when it comes to the future of Pokemon games. Now don't get me wrong, they certainly served their purpose in a very meaningful way back in the day and were very relevant for a long time, but I feel with this new age of technology that we have, the insane Wi-Fi connectivity, it really just kind of takes away the meaning behind it. They used to have to go out, find a friend that also had Pokemon, and then you'd have to trade your Pokemon over that way, but now you really just feel like a bother. You have to go hit up a friend on Skype or Discord, which also includes using the Festival Plaza. And maybe that's also a big reason that when it came to 7th generation connectivity, battling and trading was just not a fun experience because the Festival Plaza made it a lot more difficult and frustrating than it needed to be, but at the same time you still have to like get your friend like, hey, can you get online for like a couple minutes, just need to trade something. You have to bother them, they might not be able to do it, so that's a little annoying right there. Or you do need 2 DS's, and that's where things get a little better. Like the quick link is honestly really awesome, that you just, you press A on your other device and then you're good to go. But that requires having 2 DS's, siblings, all kinds of stuff like that. But it does kind of work out, but it just feels like an unnecessary, frustrating step when you think about it. That why do I have to go through all of this just to evolve a Pokemon? And that's what I mean, it just feels unnecessary and devalued at this point. It's like, okay, let's say I want Alakazam. Well, now that means I have to go through all this, go through the long trade animation. God forbid I'm trading multiple Pokemon. It just feels like, a couple minutes that get ripped from your day with a little bit of tedious things that you need to do, because now it's like, oh, I have to select it, I have to confirm, wait for the other person to confirm, wait for the other person to select it. So I just feel that we could go without the feature. Now, I feel like there's a few ways of going about this, but also a few complications as well. That just going around and ripping gameplay features is something that Game Freak is strongly against. They've said in interviews in the past they don't want to remove moves, abilities, or drastically rework Pokemon towards like an entirely new being. They want to keep everything that they've introduced effectively as is, or at least make it still recognizable. So just removing this core part of Pokemon does sound a bit disingenuous, and I know that there would be some people that are upset with it. They either find it fun or just find it such a meaningful part of Pokemon that removing it would kind of kill a little bit of Pokemon as well. Now, one thing I feel that is needed or should have been introduced at some point, like 7th generation, 6th generation, even 5th generation, would have made a lot of sense. Just an NPC that you talk to, because you effectively treat your friends as an NPC. You treat your other DS as an NPC when you only turn it on to give the Pokemon to someone else and then have them give it back to you. This circle trading, it's not really that fun or exciting. So just have an NPC do it for you almost instantly. That maybe it could go through like the little trade animation really quick, but at least you wouldn't have to select a Pokemon. It would just be like, it would show it going to them, evolving, and then come back to you, and then you're good to go. I would pay anything. Now the thing is, once you start considering the potential costs of having a feature like this in game, it starts getting pretty funny, because this would be an incredibly profitable business inside the Pokemon world. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Well, if there's like a trading store or trading hub to where you could get all the items that you need for trade, or it cost you, or you had like a little bit of an activity, turning it into some kind of community center would still make it feel like a trading experience. I think that'd be pretty cool. Also, they could charge you like 5,000, 10,000 Pokedollars, and then you could be good to go. That seems very fair, and it seems like the guy is being properly compensated for doing a trade with you just to evolve your Pokemon. So I think that'd be a pretty cool approach. But at the same time, it could get funny because what if it costs BP? Well, no matter how, like, unless it's like 5 BP, which sounds really insignificant, like what if it's 25, 50 BP to do a cycle trade, that way you can evolve a Pokemon inside the game? That actually just doesn't seem worth it, because it would take more time to get that BP than to just begrudgingly trade with a friend or with another one of your DS's. Next, I want to talk about the Pokemon that actually evolve through trading, because they already exist, which means we would have to handle them in some kind of way. But one thing that's very interesting is we have Gen 1, Gen 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then no 7. Generation 7 is the only generation of Pokemon to not include trading as an evolutionary method. Now I'm wondering if this is actually Game Freak trying to phase it out. Like, it doesn't phase out completely, because there's still a lot of existing Pokemon that you still need to perform a trade for, and even then, it seems like Game Freak has had phases. In Generation 3, you know, we were upgrading to the Game Boy Advance, that we really need to keep pumping this feature in, because see, with Generation 1, it was very meaningful for getting some of these strongest Pokemon. We have 3 stages of evolution with Alakazam, Machamp, Golem, Gengar. You know, we're starting to get higher amounts of base power, and you earn that by actually having to trade and then unlocking that 3rd evolution. Generation 2 tried to take it to the next level with all these split evolutionary trees and then making it only item-based. Actually, all of the evolutions introduced in Generations 2, 3, and 4 required an item, so it seems like almost immediately, Game Freak wanted to make it more dynamic instead of just hitting up your friend, swapping around a Pokemon, and then getting a more powerful Pokemon because of it. Then now you have to actually find the item in the wild. You have to farm for it through held items, or you have to actually purchase it through the battle means that are inside of the game. And then they just went back to, alright, trade a few Pokemon, get it to evolve and stuff. And then there was like some really interesting trades. You have to trade for specific Pokemon to induce evolution, and then just kind of like exclusive Pokemon for the split versions, that thus having an exclusive item, and going back to regular trading. But then the 7th generation, we just don't have it anymore. So I'm wondering if this was like an idea to maybe slow it down, but at the same time, if they're going to get rid of introducing new Pokemon with it, they probably need a better way of handling the existing Pokemon, since it is a little annoying. I feel like a trade NPC would be one of the most fan-appreciated things that Game Freak could ever do when it comes to the Pokemon franchise, and maybe this is a bit telling, that when it comes to the 7th generation, okay, it's a bit too much to drastically overhaul the game in such a way. That we're still on the 3DS, we're not going into a new console, we're not going into this entirely different new era of Pokemon, so they did want to keep it very familiar, which is maybe why they said, alright, we're starting to phase out the trades, but eventually we're going to have a better solution for it. Or maybe it just didn't occur to them to put in the NPC, or maybe they wanted to, but again, decided against it with the whole feel of the Alola region and what their intent was for the 3DS game. So I do think it is a possibility for the future, but there's still a lot of loose ends hanging around right here. So as you can see, there's a few hurdles that need to be addressed when it comes to reworking or even removing trade evolutions from Pokemon, but I feel the biggest problem is going to come from the Nintendo Switch itself. For starters, it's an expensive console, that when it came to the Nintendo 3DS, you can justify having multiple of them, especially because the used ones were fairly cheap, and also, don't forget, Pokemon X and Y was intentionally released alongside the 2DS, which was super affordable, so you could end up with an original 3DS and a 2DS, an XL, a new 3DS, because if you want to play like Monster Hunter, or get an improved experience with some of the new games, then yeah, that means you're actually going to be able to build upon the 3DS, and end up with multiple consoles. Also, the Nintendo Switch itself is a family console, that you can have multiple save files, you can have multiple users, and because of that, there's not going to be multiple Nintendo Switches inside of a house. It is a console. It's going to be the one bad boy in the living room that the kids are going to pick up and port around the house with their own custom save files for that. And that's why I feel that it's also different from the 3DS. If you have, you know, 2 siblings or 2 kids, like, yeah, say your parents, you have 2 kids, you can buy each of them a Nintendo 3DS. That's doable, especially with the new DS, and that's still going to be cheaper than getting one Nintendo Switch console. And here's another thing to consider. We can guarantee that at some point during the development of Pokemon Sun and Moon, work began on the Nintendo Switch Pokemon game. That is just a fact of how game design works. I mean, you look at games like Breath of the Wild, games like these take years to develop, and even then, we add years onto when Pokemon Switch is eventually released, and it still makes sense that even conceptualizing, that maybe hard programming, maybe hard game design wasn't implemented or wasn't worked on for Nintendo Switch, but Game Freak, being one of the largest developers for Nintendo, definitely had dev kits, definitely had prototype Switches, and was definitely being probably pressured to make some kind of major Pokemon experience. Also, they worked on Pokken Tournament, so they did have experience with the console. So even if they were just in conceptualizing or understanding the Nintendo Switch itself, they would have already ran into these problems of understanding, wait a second, that there were not going to be multiple Switch consoles inside of the average household, as well as just addressing profiles and multiple saves as well. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because trading is not this insane game mechanic to where if they changed any little bit of it, it would take months of development. No, they probably could have done this the day before finalization of Pokemon Sun and Moon. That at any point, all they have to do is say, oh, instead of evolving at level 36, trade. Just put in a couple little keystrokes right there, and then you change it, because the trading system is already implemented inside of Pokemon. It's already robust. They can do whatever they want with it. So even if it was near the end of Pokemon Sun and Moon's development, when they started realizing these problems about the Nintendo Switch, they could have been like, here's an idea. we might not be able to do this for Nintendo Switch, so let's just change any potential trade evolutions. Like, what if, I mean, anything. Mudsdale, for example. Let's just say you trade with a Keyberry and that's how you end up getting Mudsdale. Well, they could have just scrapped that and then turn it into a more natural evolution method at any point during the game. So I feel that there's actually a chance that this could be happening for the Nintendo Switch Pokemon game, but also just kind of showing that it's a frustrating feature. We already have enough trade evolutions as it is. Like, that's why I have this right here. We have level, friendship, certain moves, certain areas, certain times, holding an item, certain gender, trading it, certain games, all these other unique condition stuff, and I'm not against this. Also, evolutionary stones, hold items via trading with Pokemon. There's so much crazy stuff, and I love it. I love how dynamic it is. Like, when they did Inkay, you have to hold the DS upside down. That sounded like something fake. When you hear that, that is like some kind of garbage rumor that ends up with Mew being under a truck somewhere. But no, that's actually how you do it, so I love it. Even at certain times, day, night evolution, level up, friendship, all these things make the game dynamic, and it does kind of show how diverse the world of Pokemon is. But trading, having to involve another player like that, and then just end up with a Pokemon back at the end of the day, it just doesn't really feel like it's that needed anymore. And now this starts to tie in with another video that I did recently, where I said that we could also probably go without dual versions in Pokemon as well, that the gimmick is a little played out, that it did have a purpose back in its day, especially when everyone was a kid running around outside with Game Boys. You interacted with people in person, and that's where you had to link up, and it was a very exciting experience. You trade with your friends, and then you get stronger Pokemon in return, but also the exclusives, that if they had a Pokemon that you couldn't get inside of your game, you would do anything to get that if you really wanted that Pokemon, but now it just doesn't really, it's just trivial. That it made a lot of sense back then, it was a lot more meaningful back then, but now because of online and Wi-Fi and the just progression that we've seen in technology, it doesn't really work anymore. It's not as cool of an idea, but also there's no real meaning behind it. There's no real reason to have it. That's gone from this thing that you actually seek to do. You seek to trade, you seek to get exclusive Pokemon, but nowadays it's just kind of a bother that's in the way, and it really isn't the most consumer-friendly thing. So I feel that we could get away with removing dual versions as well as trade evolutions, and maybe Game Freak is taking a step in that direction because they can see what's happening with the Nintendo Switch as well. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.